Good day, everybody. My name is. I'm your podcaster. Uh, this is DN Podcast, and that's a brand name I use. So I will I will abbreviate my name and for convenience, let's say I'm DN. That's my abbreviated. For convenience, my name is being abbreviated so that you would remember DN Podcast. That said, it's March the 16th. It's past midnight as usual when I do my podcasts. And that said, uh, I guess so many things are happening on the world stage. And we'll quickly, few things I wanted to touch upon. The US drone that has been flying in the Black Sea, in the Crimean territorial waters, was brought down by two Russian planes on the 14th of 2 days ago, 14th of March 2023. That has caught everybody's attention, and besides that, what is happening in the financial sector in US? The banks are collapsing. Uh, this is this is the massive collapse that or the crisis that come about after the 2008 financial crisis. At that time, it somehow everything, though it caused so much apprehensions, uh, thankfully everything subsided with Federal Reserve intervening and taking other measures as well. But this time it seems like uh, there's real reason to be worried about. That's the other thing. And while this is happening in US, something positive is happening in India. India has gained the acceptance of 18 different countries to trade in the Indian rupee for all the international trades with its Vostro accounts. Uh, this is a really positive news. It's almost as if with the collapse in the U.S. the financial sector and Indian currency being accepted for international trade, just like US dollars. It's almost as if US is getting a taste of its own medicine. We'll talk about it a little bit more later on in this podcast. What's the other thing? Yeah, Nord Stream 2 was blown up back in September 26th last year, 2022. So who was behind it? All this everybody had a fair uh, speculation, but today now it has come to light who was behind it. We'll talk about it, but this is not the first time. 40 years ago, the same thing happened, and they blew up the Russian Nord Stream. When at that time it was Soviet Union, like 15, 14 countries under Russia. So it was just like European Union at that time. It was Soviet Union. That's a whole different history. But uh, that was 1982. Nord Stream on the other side, I guess, in the of the North Sea, they sabotaged, blew up the Nord Stream pipes. That happened. Now it's so this is the second time, repeat offender for, I guess, for to take down or destroy a political adversary, to destroy Russia's economy. Uh, it is it's it's very malicious. It is very, I guess, very internecine, uh, and it's a heinous crime. The world is for everybody, uh, and the mother. We are made to believe that the conflict is ideological differences. No, it's not ideological differences. Though we are made to believe, it's all about money. Uh, you try to destroy someone who is competing with you so that you you should be the only one uh, doing well uh, in this world. All these other issues, ideological differences, political differences, all these are secondary matters. Primarily, the it is all about money. The the country, the nation that controls the money rules the world. A group that controls the flow of money in the world controls the world. So you don't want competition. You don't want an opponent, an adversary who would who who has the potential to overtake you. So that's what's going on. Any number of heinous crimes will be committed to achieve these selfish ends, and people are made to believe everything's happening for noble reasons, for the collective benefit of humanity. That's a diabolical lie that we are made to believe. Let's talk about it a little more in detail later in this podcast. And what's the other thing? Uh, we spoke about India. Oh, BRICS nations. BRICS nations, it's expanding. Uh, we had 5 countries coming together in opposition to US dollars being the reserve currency, beginning with Russia, because Russia being a, a nation that's so rich with the natural resources. It's an oil rich country. Uh, but regardless, because of the international financial market is controlled by US and US currency is the reserve currency, uh, Russia was unable to market their oil, to export their oil, but things are gradually, as over the last 20 years, things have changed gradually ever since Putin took over the helm of Kremlin, because he's a very smart man, a very astute man, unlike uh, the Western media who likes to paint him as a demon. It was uh, it was the same demon that ironically, back in George Bush's time, George Bush Jr., who was almost hoisted to a hero status, almost putting a halo around his head, uh, just to, around that time. If you go back, Putin has visited George Bush Jr., and he was with the Hollywood celebrities. He was the and somehow George Bush Jr. thought Putin, the adversarial force in the world, is going to be his best buddy, and and that all changed overnight, right? So there's so many untold reasons, but we are not made aware of everything. But we can only read into the events, the world events, and make speculations. Uh, and it's not the best to come out, and if you're speculating on something, better not talk about it. Once you have once it becomes abundantly clear to everybody, you can point that out. And that said, these are uh, the things I wanted to talk about in this podcast. So let's start off with Let's start off with the Nord Stream pipeline getting blown off uh, in September 2022. Who did this? I mean, we all know it could be nobody other than US. So it is now come to light. It is US. They are widely conceding. Even US main the media is acknowledging that it was US that did that. And it's like I said, back during the Ronald Reagan's time when Russia, before the disintegration of Soviet Union, when Russia and 14 other countries uh, together known as Soviet Union, when the not at that time Russia was in economic doldrums, struggling, and and Nord Stream pipeline on the other side of North Sea was was sabotaged under the approval of uh, President Ronald Reagan, and it carried the whole mission was carried out by CIA. So this is the second time they're trying to blow off, uh, sabotage the pipeline. Why are they trying to do this? You know, so it's the competition. Russia has Russia has never been a threat to US economy, but it has been a huge threat to the US security in terms of being a formidable opponent, adversary, a military, uh, you know, force that could, with all the nuclear weapons that could take down US or go down with US, destroying the world, right? So that Russia was a threat. Yes, it was an adversary when it comes to military, but it was not an economic. Economically, Russia could not vie with US. The reason being, Russian GDP is said to be like not even around ballpark 2 trillion, while 1.8 trillion or something like that. Uh, while US is the biggest economy in the world, said to be almost like 21 point something 8 9 whatever trillion dollars, with a population of 330 million. US is the richest country in the world with the greatest the biggest GDP. China has come a long way. China has is almost coming close to US with 17 point something, 6 7 17 point, let's say round it up, 17 trillion dollar GDP. And India is said to be the fifth largest economy. So it's US, China, and then Russia is not even close when it comes to as an economic power. But it's a formidable superpower and adversary to US. That bothers US a lot. So whichever way they can destroy the Russian economy, they have done it repeatedly using different clandestine maneuvers, and even the Soviet Union disintegrating uh, in 1991 was who was behind it? It was Ronald Reagan, who systematically seized the opportunity. Bit by bit, Russian economy was brought down. Russia is said to be one of the richest country when it comes to natural resources. It's an oil-rich country. It's not even the petroleum oil that you would you would import from Middle Eastern countries, except Iran. Uh, Petroleum is said to be harmful to the nature because it emits carbon monoxide. But the natural gas and oil that's produced, or uh, I guess that's found in the North Sea in Russia, is it's said to be pure, and pure in the sense it doesn't emit carbon monoxide. Same in Iran. It's probably it has the biggest oil reserves in the world in terms of natural oil and gas. So it's said to be good for the environment as opposed to the petroleum oil that we import from Middle East, right, and Middle Eastern countries, right. So it is, though Russia had all the resources, natural resources, to with the potential to become the world's richest economy, it was being hampered by the fact Russia did not have the money, the economy was in doldrums, they didn't have the infrastructure to drill the oil from the sea, and everything requires money to develop the industry, oil industry. Even if it's developed, uh, us was us was putting roadblocks everywhere wherever Russia wants to turn to, because it's one thing to have your resources, but it needs to come to the market, or open market, so that the other countries could purchase the oil. But the way the US financial system works with the SWIFT system, Russia was with the sanctions and so on. Russia was not able to. Russia was barred from. I guess I don't know if barred is a good word. Russia was Russia had had to had so many obstacles and was unable to market its oil, apart from being uh, have lacking the money to develop the industry. Only if you sell your oil, you will have the money. Only if you have the money, you can develop your infrastructure. So Russia was from 1971, bit by bit, Russia was cornered from the time of Richard Nixon, and in I guess Richard Nixon moved from the gold standard to the oil standard, making the oil uh, the, the based economy, meaning instead of uh, instead of making it your currency is usually based in the olden days based on the gold reserves you have. This switch from oil, the gold to oil, made the dollar become became a reserve currency with the initiative uh, of Richard Nixon. And I guess in 1971 this happened, but in 1974, I believe, uh, the uh, the the diplomat by the name a U.S. diplomat by the name Henry Kissinger managed to persuade Saudi oil cartels or Saudi government to sell its oil in only in US dollars. So thus it became US dollar became the reserve currency of the world. Now a similar thing is happening, but in the last 20 years, I guess Putin is probably one of the smartest leaders Russia ever had. He's a very astute man, and he makes his moves very carefully, and I guess he carefully measures his words, unlike some of the American politicians. Recently, we had Lindsey Graham blurting out and just saying we have to shoot down all the Russian jets in the international waters or whatever international space, right? So that lacks leadership, and leaders cannot see. That is what you call playing to the gallery. Just trying to it's pure malarkey. It's just trying to look, you know, just barking at something, knowing that nothing comes out of your barking, your but trying to look very heroic and very uh, st- look like someone who has who is a strong leader, which of course is the opposite. Strong leaders will not speak, see, will not get carried away passionately and get show their personal emotions in their decisions. And so that's that. What else? I mentioned about India becoming, using the same, uh, you know, taking a, it was the situation is conducive, and India as now accepted by 18 countries for international trade with Indian rupees, and thus it's going to be it's almost like what US did in 1971. A great move. Things are falling into place. And then we have the other thing that comes to my mind is the BRICS nations. BRICS stands for five nations that opposed the US US dominating the the world banking system. Uh, BRICS stands for Brazil and Russia, uh, India, China, and South Africa. Five nations came together. They wanted to have their own currency, uh, opposing US, but for whatever reason, it just was didn't take off. It just in the last 10 years nothing was heard. But recently, BRICS countries like Argentina, Iran, and so many other countries wanted to join BRICS. And with everything that's going on in US, this is coming to the forefront. So that it all in all, it seems like everything is see drastic and imminent changes are very likely in the world in the near future. Uh, so it's developing, uh, and the U.S. leadership, you know, I like to be diplomatic, but I can say it using I guess it's a British expression. U.S. leadership has gone to dogs, which means it's corrupt, uh, totally corrupt, totally dishonest, so totally mismanaged. And like somebody said, you don't need outside force, an adversary to destroy US. The US downfall will come about with its own actions. It's just becoming almost, you watch the sequence of events, uh, how it's been in the last 2 years. It seems quite apparent it's going in the wrong direction, and towards an imminent downfall. But on the other hand, countries like India and Russia, China, they they are coming up. But wherever US went in interfered in interfered in the affairs of other nations, not one single country has prospered, right? And you can go back and read. And these days, you don't need to go to a library and look for things at the touch of you. Everything is on internet. At the touch of a button, you can read the material, the the records. You cannot hide the records, everything. We are living in a digital era. You can almost always update yourself and go back in history and read what happened in the past. So that said, I guess I'll wind up here. uh, I guess that would suffice for now, and thanks for patiently listening to this. I wish everyone the best. And again, the world is for everybody. Live and let live. Do not try to destroy your competition, because that's not the world is supposed to be, right? Live and let live. Compete, fine, but live and let live. When you resort to internecine thinking approach, right, nothing good comes out of it. That said, I'll wind up here.